So I'm here with Mark, a member of the AJAX APIs team. Could you introduce yourself to the viewers?
I'm Mark Lukowski, a member of the AJAX API team. Our team is a small team. We do the search API, the feed API, and the recently launched language API.
Cool. So we just came out with this new kind of REST-ish kind of API that I think is a big deal. It really opens up the APIs that you've built. Could you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, first, just came out with what we didn't actually just came out with the API. The API, or that protocol, has been running for almost 2 years now. What we did is we documented the protocol, and we documented, the same exact protocol that's been powering the search API and the feed API and the language API forever. We've just written it down, and we're trying to show people how to use the API in Flash and other non-JavaScript environments, which could include Silverlight, it could include Ruby on Rails, PHP, Java, whatever you as a developer are comfortable with. That's really what we're trying to do. The reason that we document the API just passed, so we want to proactively tell it's okay to do this. And if you look back at the change in our terms of service back in December, we actually made the terms change, several months ago. And we did that really to bring our search API terms kind of in parity with the feed API, which already allowed, non-JavaScript access. We just wanted to make it very clear to everybody that you're not breaking the law by, calling Google in this way. And then what we did just the other day is write down the protocol. We documented, the fields, the CGI parameters, the output format, and a whole number of other little things that go along with it.
So this is the same thing that, I remember, Niall Kennedy kind of went through and was watching what the browser was doing to reverse engineer it. This is just that.
It's actually, it is the Niall Kennedy effect, right? Because as smart as he is, he did not know the protocol. And we look through our logs looking for, okay, what kinds of mistakes do people routinely make? Like, for instance, we tell people to use an API key, and we put a placeholder in our samples that say your key goes here. And the most common key failure that we see is an invalid key that says your key goes here. We look at these guys that have built, Java or PHP implementations of the search API on, Niall's analysis plus their own analysis, and they all do it wrong in subtle ways. And we said, look, let's put an end to this. Let's help these guys solve the problem that they're trying to solve by writing down, what they're doing, and tell them that, hey, you can do this. You've got to follow the terms, and here's the protocol specs so that you know what that argument really means, and that you know that you don't have to pass us this thing called LSTKP and pass it equal to 0. It doesn't have any effect, and we're happy to tell you that.
Okay, cool. So what are some of the terms?
Well, the terms are, very generic terms that we've had in AJAX search. For instance, you have to show attribution to Google. When you do a search on your site, when you're hosting search results on your site, you have to tell people that it's powered by Google. We want recognition for delivering that content. When you do that, when you put our search results on your page and you say it's powered by Google, it's not cool for you to change the data. So it's not okay to present something that looks like a Google search result for a part for your car and have you change the URL to point to a porn site, for instance. That's part of our terms. You can't do that sort of, changing of the content. We also don't let you intermix or re-rank the search results, but there's so many ways to get the right effect out on your site. It shouldn't have to, go down to that level. But the terms are really, the very straightforward, simple terms. Show attribution, don't mess with the data, and this is not a search API that's designed to let you pull data out of Google and stuff it in your database. The purpose of the API is for you to present Google search results to your users in a way that complements your sites and meets their expectations of quality.
Great. So when some people kind of looked at this at the surface, they remember the SOAP API, and they're like, oh, is this just the SOAP API with JSON? But it's actually really different.
It's really, it has nothing to do with the SOAP API at all. I mean, we ultimately get our data from the same search backends, but the AJAX implementation, we went a different route. We saw, again, what kind of problems people had with the SOAP API, what kinds of abuse the API was under, and how can we avoid those sorts of problems going into it. The SOAP API had a number of issues in both the terms, well, mainly the terms, but also some quota issues. The terms were very restrictive, and the quota that lets you do 1,000 queries a day was essentially a non-starter. I mean, it's hard to call Google search results a toy, or can classify that as a toy API, but it really is an API that is built in a way that you can't use it if you're successful. If you have any aspiration of being successful, that's not the API. It had a 1,000 query a day limit on it, and even I don't know what your AJAXian page view stats are, but I would imagine you get more than 1,000 page views a day.
Yeah.
You can't use that API on your site, period. So, what's the point of having an API if you can't use it in any kind of modestly successful environment? So our AJAX API comes without limits. Now, coming without limits means that there's a responsibility on the part of you, the developer, to use it and adhere to the terms of service. As long as you're adhering to the terms of service, we think you're okay to run, at speed, and we'll contact you if there's an issue,
right,
where you're doing something wrong or stupid or abusive. We can contact you for things like that. But it's basically, we want to help you succeed, and we're offering you search results to help in that area.
Great. And these search results aren't just the kind of web search results. What are the other things that you have access to?
It's not just web. It's web, video, news, local search, so you can do mapping search, blogs. Basically, if Google has a search property and it's relatively reasonable volume, we have an API in front of it. But our system, this thing that we launched or documented, isn't just the protocol for search API. It's the protocol to access feeds and the protocol to access language translation, in the same Flash and non-JavaScript environment. You look at that and say, well, why would I ever want to access a feed through Google's API? Why not just go to the feed source? Well, if you bang on a feed source too heavily, they'll shut you down. Coming through our system, you hit our feed crawler and our feed cache system, so we kind of broker the feed to you and give you the feed in a performant way without you abusing the feed provider. So we are a good choice for feeds even on the server. We deliver the data, we'll give you the XML representation of the feed or a processed JSON version of the feed. But we're a legitimate source of feeds, even for the server side. And then language translation, they'll bring it.
Right, yeah. And from the AJAX side, you don't have to do the domain proxy hackery.
Exactly, you don't have to do any kind of, if you're in the JavaScript environment already, then it's a natural to use our API. Not just for the proxy hackery, but also we process the data. You don't have to know the difference between an RSS 0.92 feed versus an Atom 1.0 feed. For us, we normalize and say, hey, feed has a title, a snippet, and content, and a pub date. You want to go deeper, here's the XML tree for it.
Great. So how are people using the APIs at the moment?
It's all over the map. I mean, we have big customers like Time.com, the New York Times, Entertainment Weekly, People, Sports Illustrated, Plaxo. We power the Plaxo Pulse system. So we have these big sites all the way down to the tiny bloggers that have maybe 3 page views a day. And it's really a broad spectrum. I can't give you the number of unique sites, but it's a big number.
Yeah.
And in terms of traffic, I think most people associate the Maps API with Google's Premier API. But we do more traffic, more API operations per day than the Maps API does, and we caught them. Our trajectory has been basically straight up since launch. We caught the Maps API in the first year and just continue on past them, where they've flattened to some extent because it's a big number. But we're still on a tear because we have so many offerings. We're not just pigeonholed into the space of mapping. We do all kinds of search that complements mapping. We do search that complements video sites. We do feeds. and with translation, you know, we've opened up a whole new, area of applications that we can help out with.
Great. Well, thanks so much for explaining the differences in the new API.
Sure.